I'm bored. What should I play? Ooh, I know. Wrath of the Righteous is true RPG greatness. It's one of the very few games that manage to balance unparalleled mechanical depth with excellent writing across the board. I've put nearly 1,000 hours into it since 2021, completed it many times over, at the very least started dozens of playthroughs and various builds, and chalked up over 100 hours in less than 2 weeks from release. This is the stuff that RPG dreams are made of. The Mythic paths exceed even the class variety and player bases of Baldur's Gate 2, making for truly unique playthroughs that lay another entire progression system on top of the kind of character building that blows every other RPG out of the water. Forget your perk trees, big damage numbers, and your run-of-the-mill looter shooter. Wrath of the Righteous is not only one of the best RPGs of all time, it is the only true successor to Baldur's Gate 2 after more than 20 years. So, let's talk about it. It's difficult to convey just how incredible it is to be playing an RPG worthy of the name in the 2020s. Years of streamlined mechanics, bloated skill trees for a 5% increase that make big number go up, and vapid dialogue that waste your time more than anything else. Suddenly in comes Wrath of the Righteous and Pathfinder's spin on 3.5, and it's absolutely insane. Class, skill, and mechanical depth. With the way most people talk about classes and builds today, it's little more than theme or a particular weapon. Slap a bloated health bar with an axe instead of a sword, or shoot a stream of fire instead of ice and pretend there's any fundamental difference. The Elder Scrolls are a good example of this. No barrier to entry and no depth means that one playstyle is as good as any other. Stealth archers if you want to cheese the crappy AI. Larian isn't much better. Even ignoring the fact Divinity had next to zero world building and lore until Original Sin 2, their games are fun sandboxes more than traditional RPGs. Whether this is for the better isn't the point, but it has come as a result of co-op friendly, open-ended design. The armor and barrier system is insanely bloated in Original Sin 2, and the boring, streamlined systems of 5th edition continued into Baldur's Gate 3. Again, armor and weapons are valued more for their aesthetic appeal feel and how pretty you can make your body type 1 or body type 2 in character creation than fundamental class variety and depth. But then we have Pathfinder. It's not concerned with 8K sweaty skin textures or how pretty the model itself looks. It sits you down and forces you to learn its systems. It is a lot to take in at first, there's no doubt about that, but give it time and the respect it deserves, and you'll see why this game feels so fucking good to play. There really is nothing else like it. If anything, I respect it more because there is that barrier to entry, that it doesn't hold your hand through every little thing and pat players on the head the moment they can walk in a straight line without drooling on themselves. Take your time, because this is RPG greatness. Attributes and skills actually mean something. Like classic Baldur's Gate, a +5 instead of a +4 strength modifier could mean all the difference in landing a crit on a boss, or an extra spell slot for wisdom or charisma casters. And oh man, the spells! I've said before that I stay away from mages and spellcasters, or at least go for more of a hybrid class like clerics or druids, but not here. For this playthrough, I went with a Sister of Battle inspired cleric crusader called Calliope following the Angel Mythic path. Some of these spells after the merge are literally godly in the best way possible. Storm of Justice annihilates everything on screen, and the Wrath of the Righteous lives up to its name by decimating demons, even up to level 10. Phoenix Fire, so you can keep coming back from the dead over and over again and do damage each time. And remember, this is just one class with one mythic path. With the many builds I've tried over the years, all of them have been radically different. How about a Sword Saint Aldori Defender spec into the dueling sword? A traditional monk gold dragon that punches people into paste or burns them away? A scythe-wielding Slayer Lich tiefling where your army only grows with the dead that fall in battle? Guts-inspired Steelblood Blood Rager turned Dragon Disciple for the insane strength increases. My go-to hireling for basically every playthrough is a Plumekith Aasimar Knife Master that dual-wields kukris for the insane crit damage and stealth attacks that can jib endgame enemies with one good roll. It just gets better and better the more you play. Wrath of the Righteous has the kind of replay value that other games can't even dream of. The only downside is that you can't do every character idea you have at once, but that's what the next playthrough is for. Min-maxers, people just playing for fun, and everyone in between will all find something to love here in the wealth that Wrath of the Righteous offers. Of course, we need to talk about the mythic paths themselves, because as if the classes weren't already enough to keep you playing for years to come, there is another whole progression system laid on top. As the commander of the 5th Crusade, how will you shape it in your image? Will you be the living saint and rally the forces of heaven behind you? Will you raise the undead and overrun the world in darkness and decay as a lich? How about making a bargain with the devil, a chaotic trickster that's hard to pin down in any respect and makes a mockery of their friends as much as their enemies? Or how about, even in a game about a holy war against demons, you become truly evil as the swarm that walks? There really is a little something for everyone, and no matter which way you come at it, Alcat and Wrath of the Righteous consistently rewards you for skilled, interesting play. The addition of the mythic paths makes an already fantastic game into a truly legendary one. What makes it even better is the potential of merging spellbooks for casting classes such as Cleric or Oracle to unlock the most powerful 9th level spells imaginable. Wrath of the Righteous handles the progression curve genuinely the best of any game I've ever played. You earn every victory, every bit of XP, every level up, and to look back on what it was like trying to hit zombies or avoid level drain to now where you're rallying entire armies and wiping out the strongest enemies the Abyss has to offer, it's the kind of high that you don't need drugs for, buddy. Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous is right here instead. Something that RPGs tend to struggle with is in conveying the epic stakes of a story. In Dragon Age Inquisition, for example, you're meant to be leading this big holy war against the manifestation of corruption and archetypal evil, except the majority of the game you're just a couple of people walking through empty deserts or stumbling into the occasional camp in a forest. The improvements in Wrath of the Righteous weren't just in moment-to-moment gameplay and the feel of its mechanics, it was also a considerable step up in the Crusade management. Being installed at the head of the 5th Crusade by Galfrey brings with it a lot of responsibility. Just as you're fighting in the trenches, you're also tasked with overseeing the construction of bases, outposts, and the central city Dresden, managing your armies, and taking the fight into the heart of the world wound. Apparently, I'm in the minority when I say this, but I actually love the Crusade management in Wrath. Our cat's first game, Kingmaker, experimented with kingdom management, but a lot of this was essentially just time-wasting fluff, the kind of thing you might have seen in Facebook browser games. Kingmaker was an ambitious, if very, very buggy game that didn't really value your time in general, but a lot of that was cleaned up by Wrath of the Righteous, and overseeing the 5th Crusade feels so much better. First of all, you're not constantly called back to Dresden, but moments where you are, there are key choices and a steady stream of buffs, rewards, and army upgrades for doing so. It's really not that hard to have all the stats maxed out by endgame either. Of course, a big part of that is the Heroes of Might and Magic style battles in the overworld. I've seen a lot of complaints about this over the years, so if you're a new player or struggling to get into it, let me show you how to ace any army in one easy step. Setsuna Shai. My man with the proper fire spells and later cure wounds can outmatch any army in the game. Here he is wiping out one of the hardest armies in the endgame with one action. All of this is to say, the complaints around Crusade management are overblown. There's an option under the various difficulty settings to automatically handle it if you're really against it, but keep in mind you'll miss out on all the loot, rewards, and specific Mythic path events from doing so. And sure, I put an ungodly amount of time into the game that it all feels like muscle memory at this point, but it's fun. Give Crusade management a try, and you might be pleasantly surprised. And oh my god, the loot! Wrath of the Righteous has fantastic item progression and so much stuff to find, you're going to be armed to the teeth and with hundreds of thousands of gold to spend on anything you could possibly want. No coloured tiers, no lazy recycled models with some shitty scaled effect. This is proper rewarding loot, and it's magnificent. Whether it's managing your crusade or stumbling across a chest while exploring, this game keeps rewarding you in the best way possible. Every class, every build, every weapon spec, you'll get consistently rewarded over and over again. To round out this section, let's finally address the elephant in the room, buffing. Firstly, there are mods for this if you find it that tedious, but personally, I don't see the problem. If a game presents you with a way to make things easier on your end, and you choose not to do it or use a particular thing, then it's not really a reflection on the game, is it? Let's use Elden Ring as an example. Spirit Summons got a lot of flack from the purist part of the Souls community that thought it was cheating or not playing the right way, except they're in the game for a reason. They didn't somehow appear by chance. I've said before that I don't use them myself, since I prefer to get up close and personal, but that doesn't mean I have a problem with people who do. If you charge into battle without spirit summons that theoretically make a fight easier, is it FromSoft's responsibility you made a conscious choice not to use them? How about a shooter, where you keep using a low-level gun that has been outscaled by the game, or playing Dissonant loud instead of sticking to the shadows? Hopefully you're starting to get the picture, but choosing not to buff and then complaining that the game is too hard is entirely on you. Classic RPGs are all about buffing, and it's an intended part of the combat system. Chant, Bless, and Haste were the bread and butter of combat in Baldur's Gate, and it's a similar story in Pathfinder. It's not this huge waste of time that some people seemingly make it out to be. Depending on your party composition and classes, you can throw up a Bless, maybe Haste or Displacement or Protection against a particular element or poison in a few seconds, and then keep charging forward if you just care about melee. It comes back to the depth again and how liberating the variety in Wrath of the Righteous is. You get as much as you want to get out of it. But that's enough about gameplay. I could spend all day on this, and just might, if we don't move things along. After all, what good's the classes and combat without the characters and world to fill it? It may have come at the cost of performance, and don't get me wrong, even a beast of a PC can struggle with the amount of shit happening on screen at times, but I'll be damned if Owlcat didn't put everything they had into making Larian and beyond shine on the Unity engine. I want to give special mention to the lighting in particular. It's not overly flashy, but the range of environments is remarkable, from the typical lush forest to the bustling demon city of Alashinira in the Abyss, to cultist hideouts covered in demonic symbols, to eyes that rains blood and lightning. Wrath of the Righteous not only looks amazing, it succeeds at being both varied and cohesive. All of this in an isometric game made with the fraction of the budget of anything BioWare or CD Projekt Red or Larian puts out, and yet it's a game that easily outshines all of them. The heart and soul of any good RPG, though, is, of course, the characters, and this is a pretty damn good cast. I'll try and structure this in a relatively chronological order, including major characters or advisors. So first up, we have Seela. Seela is canonically a paladin, and I believe that, much like Amiri from Kingmaker, she's a character from the lore or adventure path, but I always spec her into a Demon Slayer ranger. A single animal companion in this game does wonders, and none more so than our best boy, Dog. Bite attacks can trip the enemy, which is crazy useful in combat, and you can even ride them later in the game, but I'm getting off track. Seela as a character is fine. I believe there should be room for characters that aren't super special or tragic or powerful, but her character arc suffers from just being a bit plain. I don't really care about the League of the Inspiring Chaos, or what happens to Elan, or Curl, or the wedding, or whatever. It just feels tangential, and there isn't much more to her as a character than what you see at a glance. She's insecure, a kind of reluctant but still easygoing heroic type, blockheaded but still tries to do the right thing. You can push her to be more lawful or to follow her heart if you want to, but that's about it. I don't hate Seela. There just isn't much to say beyond that. She's a perfectly serviceable character, a middle-of-the-range party member that is only a mainstay because of how I built her. Give her a longsword, a decent shield, and a dog companion, and she will wreck house. Story-wise though, she's little more than an indifferent shrug. Next up, we have a 2-for-1 deal since they are inseparable. Anivia and Beth are among the first characters you'll meet, and the very few treated as essential to move the story along, at least until later in the game. I can see why some people don't like any characters being forced onto them, and it's a fair criticism why some of the more outspoken people you pick up would stick around for so long if you go full evil as a lich, demon, or swarm, but we'll get into that more later. To understand why these two are good characters, we need to talk about representation. Contrary to popular belief, the fact I've done anything more than prostrate myself before the altar of political correctness, or dare to criticize bad writing in any form it takes, I don't have a problem with representation. There are many fantastic characters that I admire who happen to be gay or queer or ethnically diverse or whatever. Christine from Dead Money, Lisbeth Salander from the Millennium Trilogy, Dorian from Dragon Age Inquisition, Judy from Cyberpunk 2077, or Pavati, the only redeeming aspect from the Outer Worlds, even if I am a bit tired of hearing Ashley Birch. much. Beyond that, there is obviously a long, storied history of women in media who transcend tokenistic novelty or guilt-ridden corporate mouthpieces. That's the thing though, they happen to be that. It's not treated as their sole defining personality trait. Coming back to Wrath of the Righteous, Anevia and Beth are a good example of this. If you're not aware, Anevia is married to Iribeth, the Orc Paladin of Iomedae, who you first meet after the tutorial in Canabris. Not only that, she's trans, and at some point before the events of Wrath, used magic to change into a woman. I imagine that'll come as a shock to even veterans of the game, because you really have to dig deep and read into the subtext to pick up on it, but Anevia is one of the better examples I can think of in how gender or sexuality is handled in any game, not just RPGs. Here's a quick clip to give you an idea. It's sweet, and crucially, treats the both of them as human. They don't walk around with a megaphone shouting about how queer they are, or, to take a page out of Jared Leto's playbook, have trans tattooed across their forehead. Why? Because the fact Anevia is trans, or the two of them are lesbians, isn't their entire personalities. It gets commented on that they're married, and that's it. Everyone gets on with their day. To even get this clip, you have to go out of your way for an easily missable side quest that isn't telegraphed at all, and then pick a specific dialogue option. This is a world of difference from the kind of representation we see in most media today, where the characters being written are the exact same kind of shallow, self-indulgent narcissists as the people writing them. Patrick Weeks inserted Tash, partly as a wish fulfillment sub-dom fetish exercise, but also to break series law and lecture the people he or they or whatever have completely lost touch with, along with the rest of Bioware who continue their downward spiral. Compare that to Anevia and Iribeth, and sure, they might not gel well with some players. The nagging if you're particularly ruthless or evil might get on your nerves, but they're ultimately just there, living in the world, same as anyone else. They are, most importantly, treated as people, not there to tick a box and then loudly proclaim their sexuality is the only thing about them. I don't want to get too off track because it's not super relevant to this video, but Wrath of the Righteous is mature enough to handle complex themes, and actual, meaningful representation is a part of that. Anyway, I can't speak for them mechanically because, aside from a few brief sections where Anevia is following along, they are solely advisors and help manage the Crusade. They're not available as companions. Still, I like Anevia and Iribeth. Iribeth's personal quest after her faith is shaken gives her sufficient depth, and there's enough relevance in the story there for both of them that they feel like they're really a part of the Crusade. Anevia has a fair bit of screen time too, that she'll end up feeling like a comrade or buddy for most players, at least on non-evil playthroughs. Ultimately, they're two good characters that are, while not necessarily the best, still set an example of how to handle representation in a way that is not condescending or immersion breaking to the player. Next up, we have Camellia. Oh boy. Fellas, even with your best efforts, I really don't think you can fix her. It's likely that you'll end up sidelining her after the early game for stronger companions or better synergy with your party, but Camellia's utility in combat is easily eclipsed by what exactly is going on with her as a character. Camellia is one of the best examples I can think of for a character, especially a companion, that is genuinely subversive. In what way, you ask? Well, she's not a shaman at all. It turns out she's actually just a raving sadist lunatic. Again, coming back to how well this game is written across the board, Owlcat did an excellent job to keep their cards so close to their chest, but from the earliest moments where you find her standing over a guy who was oh so conveniently mutilated post-mortem, to the whips and chains hidden away in Horgus's estate, Camellia is one sick puppy. She's fascinating because she raises the question reason that I can't really think of any other RPGs, except maybe Marizai from Rogue Trader, have dared to try. Does a sadistic, morally bankrupt character mean they can't be equally compelling or well written? There is no arc for her in a sense, because all that's happening is that you're discovering who she's actually been all along, tearing away her layers to see what's beneath the surface. If you finished her romance, please let me know if there's some way to cause an alignment shift or for her to change even slightly in your eyes, but man, Camellia is wild. I think overall I still like her, although like maybe isn't the best word for it, but once you're out of Canabras, there's no reason to take her along when other characters can already cast everything she might have. She's a genuinely rotten character, and while I've certainly started her romance before, I don't think I've ever finished it because Camellia is just a little too crazy for me. Suffice to say, on this playthrough as essentially a living saint, a certain somebody wasn't breathing for much longer the moment the commander walked into that abandoned house in Dresden. Technically these two come together, but I'll go one by one since they're dependent on an early decision. Lan is the first half of the mongrel pair companions, quite literally half, considering he's a bizarre fusing of lizard and man. For context, I picked Lan on my first ever playthrough back at release, and thought he was useless because he'd never hit anything. Just goes to show, even at the time I wasn't prepared for Pathfinder, and needed to pay more attention to feats and skills, because once you get a composite longbow in his hands, Lan is crazy powerful. Pair that with a cleaving shot mythic ability and you'll be turning entire mobs into chunks of meat in no time. As a character, he's probably the weaker of the pair. I mean, more power to you if you've romanced him. I don't even want to think about how that would work, but let's be real, he's a bit whiny and pathetic. If it's not already up on screen, I'll show you the end of his questline with Savalamek, because for some reason, he always dies in this if I let him play the hero. This playthrough, I even did the back and forth thing with his mother who comes to Dresden after a while. Maybe I missed something, but that never went anywhere. The mongrels as a whole, even though they're introduced at the very start of the game, are probably the weakest plot point of the game. I just don't care about Chief Soul or what's happening to them, or the revelation they're mixed with demons. Mechanically, he's much better, sure, but after telling him to fall in line and the epilogue slide complaining that the commander didn't trust him enough, I just don't really care about his whole imposter syndrome shtick by that point. He's fine. Perfectly serviceable. Average. If your first exposure to any RPG worthy of the name was Baldur's Gate 3, you'll recognize Amelia Tyler as the voice of Wenduag, but long before that, she was the voice of Malady in Original Sin 2, and that fae behind all your headaches in Kingmaker. Amelia Tyler, naturally, does a fantastic job in this role. Whereas Lan is not confident in himself or really anything he does for most of the game, Wenduag knows who she is, and frankly, revels in it. She's ruthless and willing to do whatever it takes because she believes in a kind of Nietzschean view of power. She would cut Lan's or the commander's throat without a moment's hesitation, but she's at least honest in that way. Although not that honest when she's revealed to be playing the long game with Savalamek anyway, but she does make it well and truly clear up front the kind of person she is. Her romance is interesting if you get into it. I think she's available to both male and female characters, but don't quote me on that. I haven't done it in ages and don't think I ever went through with it to the end, because she'll almost always betray you at the temple, but Wenduag is a great character. One of the key builds I used for a long time was giving her dual throwing axes and watching her wreak havoc on anything and everything in her way. She can just as easily pivot into melee though as a fighter, and any ranged weapon is useful because she comes with those critical early game feats of precise shot by default. Overall, one of the better companions in the cast, even though I didn't recruit her this playthrough. Wenduag knows who she is, and she makes no apologies for that. She's a breath of fresh air from using the same old archetypes again, and Amelia Tyler does an excellent job bringing her to life. Now, Waldjif. So, while he's not the worst of the cast, he's definitely down there. He's a total scumbag and out for himself, but unlike Camellia, for example, there's really nothing else to him. Waldjif doesn't change as a character, and I've only completed his questline once. And that bloody boss fight in the mansion in Alashanira is a pain in the ass for a character that doesn't fare much better. First of all, he's locked in prison when you find him. He's the same smarmy, quip-filled character that media has been saturated with for years now, which, sure, that's hardly on our cat, but then, before you even get to Dresden, he bails and runs off with cultists. On this playthrough, I dealt with him the same way I almost always do. Execute him on the spot, and get it over and done with. The writing is fine enough, and whoever voiced him did a decent job, but Waldjif is an irritating character that is eclipsed by far better companions, and he's next to useless in the early game before dedicated spellcasters really start to get good. You want my opinion? Don't bother with him. It's probably a stretch to call him, or it, I guess, a companion, but Finian is probably the best early game weapon you can get your hands on. It's just unfortunate that you have to do this as part of Waldjif's quest, and whatever bullshit the tieflings are up to, but the weapon will actively improve over the course of the game. As a character, there's not much to say about him, but it does lead to a cool boss fight with a bladesmith near the end. I can't really rank him like this is a tier list or whatever. Finian is perfectly fine. He does what he's supposed to. Or it does, whatever. Okay, Ember. This will probably get me a lot of hate, but I don't like Ember. Again, I just don't see what more there is to her as a character than the moment you first meet her. Her high-pitched voice, written like she's constantly on the verge of tears, not to mention how fucking cringy her questline is, basically amounting to rainbows and the power of friendship triumphing over evil. I don't get why people love this character at all. Most playthroughs, I'll skip recruiting her entirely, but like most dedicated spellcasters, she does get crazy good later in the game. Problem is, I never take her anywhere beyond her personal quests, and never needed to, because there are far better options. I'd take a well-made voiceless mercenary recruit over Ember any day. There's been a downwards trajectory, and unfortunately, this is where we hit rock bottom. Nenio is not only the worst companion by far in Wrath of the Righteous, she is one of the most insufferable, quirky millennial characters ever written. I've never completed her personal questline, because I don't think I'll ever hate myself enough to do so, but it apparently leads to the most excruciating dungeon in the game, with more of that stupid puzzle crap. To even get to that point though, you'll have to somehow put up with a character that won't shut the fuck up from the moment you meet her, quizzing your character, regardless of alignment about this, that, and the other, and then she expects anyone to give a rat's ass about her encyclopedia or whatever when she's painfully weak as a wizard until later on. Worst of all, she's actually a furry, or should I say kitsune, and her voice actress, while I can respect they did exactly what they were supposed to with the material, did not endear me to her at all. Nenio is peak, or should I say rock bottom, of the kind of character that has inundated modern writing for years. Even as the most devout, lawful good of angels, the commander should just kick her into the world wound to finally get some peace and quiet. Avoid her at all costs. I never use her, and thank God I don't. No regrets. Technically, you can't recruit him until much later, but I'll throw him in here now because we can get all my complaints over and done with at once. Greyboar is kind of the inverse of Nenio. Instead of an irritating, quirky, haha random chipmunk that wants your attention every 2 seconds, Greyboar is written as this super badass, stoic assassin that's little more than the product of a 14-year-old's first ever fanfiction. The problem is, his professional skill does not translate to reality at all. The first time you meet him in the Tower of Eastrod, he shows his indifference to the conflict, which, whatever, more power to him if he's just in it for the contract, but then later this super professional assassin we're supposed to swoon over, the best of the best who never fails, gets slapped around and ragdolled in Dresden, and then tries to play it off like it was all part of the plan. Greyboar is useful only to the immediate contract he's hired for, hunting down and killing the red dragon Devara. Beyond that, he's really not as cool or memorable as he makes himself out to be. If you want my advice, just before you go up to the top of the tower to finish Devara off, unequip everything from him and then turn down his offer. When you next meet him outside the Ivory Sanctum, things don't exactly turn out the way Mr. Big Badass Assassin envisioned. What a pathetic, bumbling joke of a companion. Good news is, now we've finally pushed to the worst of the lot, things are finally looking up. Dairon is easily a mainstay in the party because even if your commander doesn't vibe with his narcissistic, vain personality, he easily makes up for it as the best healer in the game, as a charisma-based oracle. Dairon's questline is interesting enough. Getting a look into his past and who he used to be provides some insight into what's made him the way he is today, but at the same time, it's kinda dropped and forgotten about for most of the game. Up until Leotor or Lyator or whatever his name is calls you out to confront the big bad other that's been possessing him since he was a child, Dairon doesn't really change as a character. Even after that, he doesn't really change. I guess he knows who he is, much like Wendoarg, which the two of them have some fun banter together. Still, while he's not that memorable to be a mainstay in the story, I take him basically everywhere as the main party healer. Channel positive energy will carry you through the game until you get heal mass and other endgame spells. Social is fine, but unfortunately he suffers a bit from the Caden treatment. There's nothing particularly wrong with him as a character. I even tried his romance once, and it was fun enough, but he's just not that interesting as a character. He's similar to Sealer in the sense that what you see on first meeting him is still essentially who he is at the very end of the game. Social is a cleric who can pull his weight if you need an alternative to Dairon, but his personal quest for Trevor isn't really about him, and Trevor himself comes too late in the game for any real depth or screen time compared to the other companions. I don't hate him, but it's a case where I can't exactly say I love him either. He fades into the background like one of his many paintings. I'd be interested to know what happened with his character behind the scenes, because while all the characters at least provoke some kind of reaction from the commander, whether good or bad, Social is just there. When there's already better alternatives to the spells or martial ability he brings, well, he's left on the bench for most of the game. It's nice he gets his brother back, but the two of them have little reason to be there once they're reunited. Go home, I guess. Unfortunately, nothing would be lost if you did. We've saved the best till last. The penultimate companion, and one of the standouts from really any RPG I played, is the lawful evil Hell Knight, Regil. On paper, this is a character that shouldn't work. He's written to be intimidating, but he's a gnome standing little more than a meter tall, and yet, as a combination of some truly great writing and whoever was cast that nailed his voice, Regil brings the kind of presence that puts other games to shame. Regardless of whether I'm playing lawful good, or chaotic neutral, or an evil lich, every single playthrough, I'll make a beeline to rescue the Hell Knights from the gargoyles. One, because they're arguably the best Crusade units in the game, and two, because you get Uncle Reggie, as Waljeff likes to call him, on your side. From a purely utility standpoint, the double weapon he uses, a gnome-hooked hammer, is crazy good in terms of critting and the amount of attacks you'll get each turn. He can wear heavy armor, tank with the best of them, and you get an uncompromising character that will do whatever it takes, make the hard decisions without a second thought, so long as it ensures victory. He does not compromise. He doesn't fall back on, oh, woe is me. He is a warrior to his very core. Here's one of my favorite exchanges in the game. His personal questline reinforces this. While Regil himself doesn't really change as a character, his arc is as much a reflection on who he is as a person. It's not about his personal ties, but about the importance of seeing the Crusade succeed, and he puts everything, even his own name and reputation, before himself. Love him or hate him, he's the kind of character that demands and earns respect, and it's always a pleasure to read on his epilogue slide that he viewed the commander as a friend. Seriously, don't sleep on Regil. Like Sten, he's one of the best. You just have to earn it. Last, but certainly not least, we come to Best Girl Aru. I simp for Viconia, I simped for Morrigan, and you bet your ass, it's now time for the Redeemed Succubus Appreciation Hour. In all seriousness, I love Arusha because she transcends what could have easily been a very poor caricature in less capable hands. Like Seela, I believe she's also from the adventure path, but her premise is wholly unique. A Desnan succubus struggling against the cosmic, universal evil of her own nature and trying to ascend past the fate she had consigned herself to. What's remarkable about her is that she doesn't shy away from the evil in her past, or try and pretend it's all lovey-dovey all the time to the point it's sickly sweet either. She's genuinely regretful for what she's done, and each and every day trying to do just a little bit better. I love that Alcat were brave enough to put in options about moving too quickly in her romance, or even the option for evil players to turn her back on Desna and make her fall back to her old ways. Aru is a character defined by her sexuality, and yet she is so wholesome and earnest that even my dusty, cynical old ass feels my heartbeat whenever she's on screen. Her voice actress did an amazing job of conveying that uncertainty and how shy she always is. Aru is a wonderful character that I can't think of anyone, save for maybe Falls from Grace from Planescape Torment, that manages to explore so much with comparatively little screen time. When you finally meet Daimalchio in the Abyss, he's living proof and a horrifying reminder of what Arushale did before she began her long, hard path to redemption. Again, I want to point out how masterfully Alcat handled the writing in this quest, as Daimalchio touches on some very violent, misogynistic urges that represents the very worst of the Abyss. And again, this is all because of what she did to him not so long ago. Her romance is just as wholesome, and even though I didn't want to romance anyone this playthrough, I just couldn't help it. Arushale is the best in an already really solid cast, and her utility makes our happy little succubus even better. Use magic device, perception, trickery, she can do it all. If you're able to do all the steps to recruit her by contacting her at the chapel, you pick her up by Dresden, and from there, she's established as a character with a solid arc by her own means, but also relies on the commander to help her through hard times and the moments of doubt. One of the standout moments in the game is talking with her in the prison, which is so sweet. In any other game, I'd probably roll my eyes or groan, but Arushale is one of the very few wholesome, cute characters that I genuinely love. Romance or not, it's just rewarding to be a part of it and see her finally reach her dream. Let's make it crystal clear, we don't tolerate Aru slander in this house. I want to hug her, hopefully without being killed instantly. There's one, or technically two, characters outside your main companions that I want to touch on, but I'll save it for the story section in a bit. If you're expecting some big breakdown of the Crusade advisors, they're really not much more than mouthpieces that you can skip through to see the choice effects. But I do like the fact your companions will play a role in meetings. Again, Wrath does an excellent job in conveying the scale and little details of running a crusade. The last character I'll touch on here is the storyteller. If you played Kingmaker, he'll look pretty familiar since he also appeared there, but there isn't much to him as a character. I should make it clear that I've never played the tabletop itself. All my experience comes from Alcat games, so if there's context I'm missing out on here, please let me know. Still, he's interesting enough and plays a central part in the story and the secret ascension path, if you decide to go that route, that he feels similar to recurring characters like Volo from Baldur's Gate. Overall, Wrath does an excellent job with his characters. For the most part, they all feel believable, they have lived full, interesting lives separate from the player, and they're sufficiently fleshed out. Some are specific to particular mythic paths. Ivu is a dragon companion for Azatas, and the twins Lariel and Targona are central to the angel path. You even have the option to turn major story characters into undead followers as a lich, like Staunton and Queen Galfrey, which is a lot of fun. But this section has gone on for long enough. We've covered the essentials. Now it's time to see how the 5th Crusade fares, and what awaits in the World Wound. For a game that already masterfully handles gameplay, class, and item progression, it's only natural that the story delivers one hell of an experience too. In most games today, you'll find there's an incessant, often corporate mandated need to get a big, dumb set piece on screen to keep the attention of the lowest common denominator that most games are designed for, or alternatively, pad things out past the Steam refund window before players go back to the same old shit. Baldur's Gate 3 starts with dragons and mind flayers in an interplanar battle in the Seven Hells, and wow, it's just so epic and cool and expensive. Cyberpunk 2077, a cutscene of all the things you could have been doing until the developers ran out of time and money to implement properly. In short, there's a clear lack of restraint. And yes, in Wrath of the Righteous, you're a nobody brought in on a stretcher in a city then besieged by demons. You don't matter. You're not the prophesized hero from the outset. You're down in the dirt and can do little more than pick yourself up and move forwards. Dozens of hours later, when you're at the head of entire countries worth of armies, fighting the strongest demons and creatures in the entire setting, it's hard to believe that you've come so far. And yet it all feels so natural. Putting the player in as the spearhead of the 5th Crusade is handled pretty much flawlessly. From the moment you first push back against the demons, gather what few allies remain and retake Canabras, all the way up into the Siege of Dresden, Alcat builds the stakes up in a way that feels so effortless it puts other games to shame. One thing I'll say is that it's so obvious that Halfling stand-in for Lindsay from Kingmaker is a traitor from the get-go. I don't know if Alcat expected players to figure that out, or maybe it's just an oversight, but you can literally catch her setting fire to the camp during the night attack and you can't do anything about it. I spoke with her beforehand, exhausted her dialogue tree, and still nothing. It's not the end of the world, it just feels like the writers forgot about her or something. As the Crusade grows, so do you. Your many enemies are ready and waiting, and part of why the story works as well as it does is in how interconnected the overall design is. Plot threads set up from the beginning of the game slowly unravel over the course of the story, and even then, it may take alternate playthroughs or different mythic paths to fully grasp what's been going on behind the scenes. Each area is not plopped down in the middle of nowhere, with little relevance to the overall plot. Mustafen, Xanthir, Monago, Jerebeth, Nocticula, Baphomet, Aureli Volesh, Jaskari, you are simultaneously a grain of sand, and yet also the wild card in play that may make or break the fate of the planes. It's all interconnected, and that was no easy feat to pull off. Of course, all this revolves around Aureli Volesh and the world wound that tore a hole into the abyss not so long ago. As an antagonist, she's compelling, and although it takes a long time to fully get the picture of what's happening behind the scenes, she has far more motivation for why she does what she does than just evil or because the writers needed a plot device. In a way, she's a dramatic foil to your commander, and yet the two of you are bound by far more than fate. I still don't think she holds up as well as John Irenicus, or Akechi, or Shodan, or some of the other great villains in gaming, but whoever voiced her, it went a long way into selling a flawed, tragic villain. Nice to know she cares about Suture, too. I've spent a great deal of time at this point glazing basically everything in the game, but it's here with the story that one of my few big criticisms needs to be brought up. I was lucky in some ways that my first playthrough was with a monk angel Asimar, because coming into it blind, the glowing bright light every time you got a new mythic ability, or how pivotal the Hand of the Inheritor is in the story, I assumed it was specific to the angel path. But if you played Wrath yourself, obviously you know that's not the case. I'm not saying the game needed to drastically branch out depending on every single path you could possibly take. There is already so much to this game as it is, but it frankly doesn't make sense that the Hand of the Inheritor would ever help you if you're a Lich, or a Demon, or even more neutral paths like Azata and Trickster. This goes back to what I was saying with Anevia and Erebeth earlier. The fact that major characters stick around when they would theoretically kill you on sight because it goes against their character, and frankly, the fact you should have consequences for your actions. From memory, Arushale will only leave you if you fully become a demon near the end of the game, not just that first point in Dresden, and Regil might grumble a bit about certain mythic paths or choices, but it's stretching believability where there would be very little room for interpretation. Really, the only character that stays true to her code is Wenduag, who will voice so discussed if you're a more good-aligned character, as she continues to serve Savalamek behind your back. Why is Galfrey all fine and well with appointing some sickly-looking guy as the commander when he's working towards becoming a lich? Why are Erebeth or Anevia or like half the people in Dresden just fine and dandy with being anywhere near a bloodthirsty demon that could explode into rage at any moment, or a devil in league with the Hells? I understand why this was the case, but it doesn't change the fact it feels odd that the game doesn't address this until basically the very end. It was a missed opportunity, I think, to not have story characters turn hostile, or maybe even try to assassinate you in secret. Kia or Kier, or however you say it, the guy who comes with Morveg, refuses to serve you if you're evil, but he still stands around in the same spot in Dresden and offers a few comments at most. It's not a big deal, but it's still something worth pointing out. I absolutely agree that the game feels like it was written more towards good or neutral playthroughs, but evil Mythic paths are still compelling and fleshed out. Lich is a lot of fun, and the swarm that walks is just about as evil as it could possibly get. I don't want to make out that evil is just the same afterthought like it is in most games, not at all, but it feels a bit incongruous, I guess. Whether it was by virtue of the fact you're leading a crusade, or the alignment of most characters you meet, the story leans more often than not into Gold Dragon, Legend, Angel, Azata, the good characters and choices than otherwise. The late game Mythic paths themselves are a whole other story. I've unlocked and done all of them at least once, save for Devil, because it's pretty difficult to meet the conditions for it. Legend and Gold Dragon take so much goddamn time, and you're sent on errands all over the world map that it feels like the game's basically over at that point, but they're fine enough. Act 3, once you capture Dresden, is where the bulk of the game's content opens up, and you'll be pulled off in a million different directions. Winter Sun and what's happening there is probably the standout of this section of the game, but where things really get interesting is the descent into the abyss. Like us or not, Galfrey relieves you of your command. Don't worry, we're finally going to get to her very soon, and sends you into the demon realm of Nocticula. Like the Underdark and Baldur's Gate 2, this is not only a great rug pull moment, but also a prime opportunity to flesh out what's been happening on the other side of the conflict all this time. Alashunira is a dream come true in terms of exploring the city. Pairing it with the reputation system to go up each level was a nice touch, but as demons and various creatures will tell you straight to your face, whatever reputation you had back on Larian means absolutely nothing to them. You're just another weak little mortal out of your depth and caught in a web of a great many schemes. It's here where most of your companions will also have major character moments. Arushale confronting Demulcio, Social finding Trevor, or Camellia getting freaky and more than she bargained for in the 10,000 Delights. Much like the Underdark, I've seen a fair bit of criticism about this section of the game, but my feelings are the opposite. This is all new territory, literally, and you're forced to work your way up from nothing as you put front and center at the heart of the abyss. This is just one plane of many, of course, but as mentioned earlier, the long game of many of the plots that have been happening behind the scenes this whole time finally start to come together. When you finally get some answers from Abrilu Vorlesh, it's off to the mines, and this is another great dungeon in the game. Angels are well and truly tearing everything apart at this point. Once back in Golarion, the reset from Alashunira carries over in a sense, because now you have to rebuild your armies from scratch thanks to a certain somebody. So let's finally talk about Queen Galfrey. As the saying goes, pride comes before the fall. As central as Vorlesh is as the main antagonist, it's easy to forget Galfrey, who in reality is actively undermining your efforts throughout the game. The moment she takes the helm of the Crusade after going into the Abyss, it's a disaster. Remember, this is the same queen that has prolonged her life well beyond her natural time. She's overseen 4 prior Crusades that all failed, and then appoints an upstart that ultimately achieves what she couldn't in a century.
She is not just the Crusade commander. She is our hope. Our only hope.
Our only hope is she? I see you do not value me or the other heroes of the Crusade very highly, my righteous brother and comrade.
With little screen time, Galfrey's character touches on something that few villains explore with any meaningful depth: hubris. Sure, the plot in game needed you of all people to go to the Abyss to move things along, but it's heavily implied that she's also trying to get rid of you, that you have gained too much power and influence. Unless you're an angel and gain the trust of the Hand of the Inheritor, or you successfully maxed out all the Crusade stats, which was only fixed recently, Galfrey strips you of the command she willingly gave you in the first place, all because she views you as a threat, and because her vanity demands it. By the time you come across her in Eyes, one disaster after another has humbled her and shown that it was a mistake to have ever thought herself a similarly capable strategist than just a figurehead for Mendev. It's actually quite easy to save her and the banner if you move up the side path, but this playthrough I decided not to. Pride comes before the fall, and Galfrey was not someone to be mourned, but forgotten, along with the rest of the ghosts of Sarkoris. It's also around this point that Iomedae, Nocticula, and Aureliu Vorlesh appear, and you'll have the chance to either reaffirm or change your mythic path. Legend is best for min-maxers since you can essentially get another whole class to level 20, but few players will want to lose out on all their spells and abilities they've been using for most of the game. Lich finally gets locked in too. Whether you think it was worth the wait is up to you. I always play on core difficulty, but regardless, most players at this point will be mopping up what's left of the armies in your way and making for the final push towards Eyes and then Threshold. There isn't much left to reveal in terms of story. For people trying to do the secret Ascension ending, there are some extra steps to go through, but all the cards are essentially laid out on the table at this stage. The ineluctable prison, and at least on this playthrough, rescuing the Hand of the Inheritor is probably the highlight of this section. Since Baphomet is busy cowering somewhere in the Abyss and little more than idle threats, now it's Daskari's turn. With the stage set, all that remains is the push towards Threshold and the final confrontation with Aureliu Vorlesh. It all comes together in a way that very few games can pull off. Holy damage with a crazy powerful Angel Cleric buffed and armed to the teeth. This final push that has given me grief at times in previous playthroughs was a breeze. The best and worst the Abyss has to throw at you is little more than mincemeat. Wrath also does the final goodbye thing that BioWare standardized, but really, you're just going through the motions at this point. You've come this far and victory is practically assured, fighting your way through the ruins of Threshold, and a mother and the echoes of a child finally meet face to face. There's a decent range of choices to tie things out here. You can sacrifice yourself, ascend to genuine godhood as Iomedae herself once did, get Aureliu to close the wound, or for some reason, walk away and just leave things as it is. The Angel Path has one last surprise up its sleeve. Daskari is slain in his own realm, and with that, the story of Calliope and the Fifth Crusade finally comes to a close. Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous is not only one of the best RPGs ever made and the only true successor to Baldur's Gate 2 in over 20 years, it is a timely reminder of what role-playing games used to be. I die a little inside every time someone says Skyrim is the best RPG ever, or when run-of-the-mill live service looter shooter slop has RPG elements because number go up. Role-playing games forgot what the role-playing part involved. It's not a sweaty character creator for the yes queen treatment or dialogue options that don't lead anywhere. The fact this game ever saw the light of day is a minor miracle. An indie Russian studio that was punching well above its weight that, sure, has had a pretty poor track record so far with how the games have been at release, and I'm not trying to minimize that, along with some dodgy publishers, but Alcat has still succeeded despite the odds, much like the Fifth Crusade, and they now have a publishing wing as well. BioWare and Larian have been down this road before, and I'm very much hoping Alcat won't be yet another studio that flies too close to the sun, but whatever happens next, it still can't detract from two fantastic games, Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader and the best of all, Wrath of the Righteous. There is still so much I haven't touched on yet. The amazing amazing soundtrack, or the satisfying splatter of gore as enemies explode into chunks of meat. So many classes, so many possible builds, hidden checks, conditions, encounters that are all dependent on your particular playthrough. I meant it when I said this game has the kind of replay value that lesser games could only dream of. What about the DLC? What DLC? All this time I put into it, I don't have any of the post-launch story or classes that Owlcat has put out, so I can't comment on it. I don't feel the need to play it because, much like my well-worn disc copy of Dragon Age Origins back in the day, this game already has everything you could want. A strong main story backed up by a great, memorable cast of characters, and the gameplay depth that would melt the brains of people lapping up the kind of casual slop that gets cranked out today. This game has it all. Any way you come at it, any difficulty, any class, any of the incredible and unique Mythic paths, Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous is among the best RPGs have to offer. There are no cinematic cutscenes, no fancy ray trace lighting, and it's running on an engine as shitty as Unity. Trust me, I should know. Yet Owlcat delivered a banquet for old school RPG lovers, and a timely reminder that the genre is not quite dead just yet. Now, if you'll excuse me, I think I'm gonna go play it again.